Hello, my name is Jason. I am a hacker. I do offensive security testing. I've done it for about 10 years now, maybe 9 years. So I work in the professional field. Right now I work for a company called BugCrowd, which we do bug bounties. If you've ever heard of a bug bounty, it's the idea that a company opens themselves up to be hacked and works with researchers and pays them a bounty, a monetary award for finding vulnerabilities on their site, whether it be web vulnerabilities, network vulnerabilities, IoT devices, whatever they want to do. So they get paid for doing that kind of stuff with our customers. So I train people right now.
And you say, how good is that compared to a pen test?
Okay, so bug bounty versus pen test. That's right away. We're going. Okay.
We're going in.
It's about so in my experience, about 8 times the submissions you get from a pen test.
But are they good submissions?
They're great submissions. Yeah. So one of our biggest case studies was a customer who was a Fortune 10 financial company. I can't say the name, but they did a pen test quarterly. So hired a consultancy to come in for like $20K. They did that quarterly for their apps. And then they also had static code and analyzer tools, and they had network tests and stuff like that. And so they opened that same scope of testing to a bug bounty. And over the course of over the year for the pen testing and all that other stuff, they hadn't found any critical vulnerabilities. Within 30 days on a bug bounty, when they opened it up to 100 researchers, they found 8 critical vulnerabilities, which were like, we call them P1s, but they're like take over the server vulnerabilities, SQL injection, anything that'll get you remote code execution on a website or of a service or something like that. So,
It's the pen test done. You call it a black test or
a black box test, yeah. So it's no knowledge. You don't get source code. It's just like off the internet, right? You could go register on BugCrowd right now and go after we have probably 30 open programs that are open to the internet, and you could just hack them. You don't get in trouble if you're registered with us. And then when you find a vulnerability, you submit it through our platform and they pay you. So, and it's black box. You don't get any knowledge except for the URL of the site or the binary of the product. So definitely black box.
And they have some rules and stuff.
There are some rules, right? And there are some vulnerabilities that don't qualify for bounties sometimes, like really low-level vulnerabilities that don't have security impact are usually out of scope, we call them, so they don't qualify. But usually stuff with decent impact will net you anywhere from $200 in the low range, and the high range is we paid out $30,000 for one bug 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, and there was a $100,000 vuln on OnePass.
Yeah, so right now our largest single bounty that you can earn is OnePass. If you've ever used LastPass, OnePass is the competitor to LastPass. If you find a flag that they've hidden on their server, if you manage to exploit it, they'll pay you $100,000. Just no questions asked.
Awesome.
Good luck, though.
Yeah, they're pretty secure, yeah.
Good luck.
So I actually run a class like the web hacking class that Sam does for five people. They're veterans, friends of mine who are just trying to get into application security. And what we do is we go through A+, N+, and then we go into application security testing, so website testing. And so I was looking for some slides to go along with the course, and I happened to Google, just so I didn't have to replicate work, and Sam had slides already for this class. And so I contacted Sam and I said, hey, thanks for the slides. You put them online. Now I don't have to do all this work. And he was like, do you want to come and talk to the students about what you do? Answer questions about careers and InfoSec. And then I brought JP, who works for me, who's probably smarter than me anyway. So,
I wouldn't say that. This guy's a legend.
No, we took an Uber, so we're good. Yeah. So I'll give my history a little bit, and then you guys can ask whatever questions you want. So just think of it like a Reddit AMA. So I did City College in Santa Barbara. So I went to Santa Barbara City College from after high school for 2 years, and I got my Cisco certified networking accreditation, and then I stopped going to school. And then I did help desk for about 3 years on the night shift at Citrix. And so at Citrix, I did a lot of stuff like configure proxies so their products would work, and just general IT support over the phone. So while I was doing that, I was still taking some electives at the City College I was at, and they had a course called Ethical Hacking and Network Defense, City College course. And I took it, and it was still teaching stuff like Code Red. And I had seen some security stuff, and I'm like, this is not accurate whatsoever. The curriculum was outdated. The teacher didn't really know what he was talking about, and it was really unfortunate. And so I started just Googling stuff on my own. I begged, I borrowed, and I stole every training that existed. This was 10 years ago. There wasn't much about ethical hacking, network pen testing, web application hacking. And I taught myself over 3 years how to do this for a living. And then for my organization, I found vulnerabilities. They promoted me up into real IT. I did that for a year at Citrix. Then I left Citrix to go to a consultancy called Redspin. Worked there for 2 years. They kind of went under for a little while. They're now successful, but I left when they went under. I went to Black Hat. I competed in a CTF. I went to a class, and they had a CTF at the class. I got second place in the CTF and got hired by HP. Spent 5 years at HP on their pen test team, and ended up becoming the director of the pen test team, trained 160 pen testers, wrote their whole methodology for web, network, and mobile testing. And then now I left HP 2 years ago to come to BugCrowd, which does this bug bounty thing. I was the #1 researcher on BugCrowd out of 1,600 at the time for 2014 and 2015. So I had the most critical level bugs for them, and then I got to know the family at BugCrowd, and eventually they offered me a job because I was good at that, and then I help them now train people, train their analysts on how to reproduce bugs. I talk to clients about what it's like to be a hacker on the side of a program that they're going to sign up for, stuff like that. And I hired JP.
So my name is JP Villanueva. I also go as Swagnito. That wasn't intentional, but everyone liked it. And I'm also Swagnito on the BugCrowd platform as well.
You're in the top 100, right?
At one time I was top 100, but then I got busy.
Yeah, so part of the bug bounty model on BugCrowd is that we have a leaderboard. And so as you find vulnerabilities, you get points associated to them. The more critical the vulnerability, the more points you get. And so we have a leaderboard, the top 10 of all time, or we have the top 10 of all time and then the top 10 of the current month that shows, but then we also have continual metrics that run on all the hackers that register with us. So being part of now BugCrowd's crowd, how big is it? It's like
40, almost 50,000.
Almost 50,000 registered security testers on BugCrowd. So being part of the top 100 is a really big thing.
Yeah.
So JP is there.
Yeah, I'm 200 now.
Oh, 200. Okay,
yeah, I'm all the way down to 200.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But I got my start out of high school. Then I went to Ohlone College down in the East Bay. So I'm from the area. So I went there. I kind of dropped out because I was like, man, I don't really want to go to school. Then I got a job at Stanford University as a IT security intern. It was completely luck. I went on Craigslist and I went to the interview and they're like, yeah, you're hired. And I was just like, okay. So then they hired me there. I did that for a little bit. Then I started working for a startup in Financial District, and they did they did financial stuff. But then the economic crash hit in 2008, and I was like, I don't think I want to be in this line of business anymore. So then I was like, maybe I'll just go back to school. So I went back to school for computer science, and then I actually graduated from SF State in 2012. But while I was going to SF State, I also worked at UCSF as a security engineer, part-time, and that was mostly due to the fact that I worked at Stanford, and the old CISO was someone I knew at Stanford, so I got into UCSF. But after I graduated high school, I had a couple options. I've done literally everything in IT. I've been help desk. I've been a systems admin. I've done security. So I had a couple of, and then I just got my computer science degree, so I could literally do anything, right? But then when I graduated, I had a couple of choices, but I was like, I really want to do offensive security because I was mostly on the defensive side, but I want to do offensive stuff. So I actually had chances to work with my own, the people I went to school with, but I was like, I don't really want to be a software developer. So I went and worked for White Hat Security after I graduated, and I was there for about 4 years, and that's where I really learned how to do web pen testing stuff. The thing is, they taught me how to do it on the job. It's funny because you guys can learn it in a class, because back then there were no classes about any kind of pen testing or web application hacking. But I learned there, and it was out of the Web Application Hackers Handbook. And then, I became top of the what they call the TRC. And then I moved into sales because I was more interested, like I already knew how to hack, right? I was more interested in getting companies to actually use security instead of coming up with well, we need to buy this, we need to buy that. So I wanted to mold it so that, they would actually be interested in security, and I would help them actually, help these companies actually care about security. So
That's Jeremiah Grossman's company, right?
yeah, so yeah,
They actually have a service, right, where they put a client on they control your security and monitor it and stuff.
right, yeah, so yeah, I'm really close with Jer.
Yeah.
And then I did that for a little bit, and then Jason, because I followed Jason on Twitter, and he posted something. He posted a job rec, and I was like, well, I want to go work for Jason. So then, I applied, and then here I am now.
Cool. So, well, we don't have an agenda or anything. Like, we're just here to answer questions kind of about the industry, like if you're interested in it, like, how you get into it, what certifications might be useful, like tips and tricks, or we can just start telling you hacker war stories.
Yep.
We could do that too. Whatever you guys are interested in. So it's open floor. Does anybody have any questions at all? Yeah.
So basically, the class that we're taking now is SAM. They're very helpful and whatnot, but sometimes we also need to do outside studying. So how do you guys manage the time to do so? From class to work or wherever it may be. How do you guys find, or how, at least at the beginning, how do you guys find the extra time to just learn something even more?
Yeah, when I was part of help desk for Citrix, God, this is being recorded, but I didn't do much work when I was trying to learn security, honestly. I took calls, but it was a night shift job, so I didn't have a lot of responsibility, really. I had maybe 15 calls a night, and the rest of the time I would just read and follow tutorials on YouTube and stuff like that. Hacking as a discipline or security as a discipline takes a lot of care and patience, and so you really have to kind of throw yourself into it and have a passion for it. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed, unfortunately. Just as a general time management thing, I would say just try to focus. Well, actually, what you can do is if your work cares about security at all, see if they'll stipend you or give you cutout time, right? Like at Citrix, they taught us all this Security Plus class just to make sure we could talk about proxies and firewalls and things like that. You work in IT already, talk to your employer and just be like, I'm really interested in security. This helps you because someday maybe I could help the security group or move into a different group. I'll be more valuable to the company. Yep. And I want to take an hour out of my day to review hacking or ethical defense or something like that, network defense or something like that. So I did that with Citrix, and they were cool. They let us have an hour out of our day for free study. That's not unheard of in San Francisco, honestly. If you have an IT employer, they're really interested in up-leveling their employees and getting more value out of their employees, so it might work. Other than that, you just kind of have to eat into your free time. I'm a big gamer. I play a lot of video games. So I had to originally not play World of Warcraft and stuff, give up some of my vices. So yeah, it's just, I think when you do security or, if you guys have taken the web security class or the network pen testing class or one of those classes, you'll know right away if it's a passion because you just kind of feel it. I knew when I did some of the real hacking stuff, I'm I want to do this for a living. I think this is really cool. And so when you get that about any topic, whether it's IT or writing a book or whatever, you'll find the time, you'll make the time, and you'll do it until either you do it or you die trying. I think at least that's how I feel with most of my people, right? They all have the same passion about security that I do. So I don't know, JP might have a different answer.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much the same for me. If you want to do it, if you have that curiosity, and you're this is what I want to spend my free time on. It's obviously you have finite amount of free time. You have work, school, whatever, but it's just like any other hobby or passion. You just need to put time into it, and then you'll eventually get results.
Luckily nowadays there's a lot of learning material. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials. There's a lot of vulnerable applications that you can stand up and hack for security in specific, but for IT in general too. There's a ton of stuff out there. If you want to learn to administer Active Directory, or you want to learn how to be a Linux sysadmin, or you want to learn anything, there's tons of education out there. So just dedicating, like they say, I don't know what the metric is, but it's like, what is it, 10,000 hours to master something, right? Well, start at hour 1 and just do an hour a day until you're good enough to get a job somewhere, right? Like, there's no substitute for hard work when it comes to getting into something. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? No. Okay. All right. So what we can do is kind of talk about. I like to call them pen test war stories. So whenever I go to a conference, a security conference, I try to get all of my friends I've worked with or other hackers who are on Bugcrowd or whatever in a big circle at dinner, and we swap stories about like security stuff, right? Like techniques we've used and like things we've hacked, and it's always a good time, have a beer or just sit down and chit chat. And so there's some pretty good stories when you've worked in security for like 10 years or so. You amass like this kind of war story type mentality where you've done some stuff. So actually, I'll let JP start since I've been talking the whole time, but we can just kind of talk about some stuff we've encountered in security. So
Sure. Let me see. I won't say any customer names, but I'll say some of the vulns that interesting vulns that I've found while doing assessments and stuff. There's one vulnerability that I found. It was a remote code execution, and it was on a hospital app. I'm not telling you which like hospital, but basically it was like a nursing application where you can fill in all of your details, like what you did during the day if you were a nurse, like all the details. And there was a spell checker on the form, and I'm like, that's weird. I've never seen a spell checker on a form before. So I looked into that, and apparently, like the spell checker had a dictionary function where you could look up like stuff in the dictionary or like what a spell checker does. So I was like, that's weird. So I look, and then the spell checker actually there was a parameter that pointed to a file on the server. I'm like, that's funny already. So I look at that, and I'm like, oh look, it's the file. I get a huge dictionary file of like all these words. I'm like, okay. But then I was like, wait a minute. What if the normal functionality of a spell checker is to add words to a dictionary, right? So I started adding words, and I looked at the file again. I was like, oh yeah, there's my word. But being of the hacker mindset, it's like, well, I can input stuff into the server, so why don't I input code in there? And then it was like ASP. I put it in there, and it popped, and it was like, and I got remote code execution on there. And it's like you just have to, like what Jason was saying earlier, is that if you put enough time into it, you will find like crazy vulns like that. It's like I was just like messing around and like doing stuff, but yeah.
Was it a public cloud or was it private cloud? Your own?
It was fortunately it was private. So
Private?
yeah.
SQL backend? Or
What's that?
SQL backend?
Well, yeah, it was SQL, but the thing was that's not the interesting part of the story. The interesting part of the story is the call I had with a customer about the vuln. So I explained all these details to them, and then the developer was on the phone call, and then he's like, "Wait, that's pretty bad. You mean to tell me anybody could put cuss words in the dictionary?" And I was like,
no, I took over your server.
"Bro, I just like popped your server. Like that's the least of your worries."
Yeah.
So.
I had one time where I was working at Redspin, and we had a customer who didn't believe in security assessment. So even though they were mandated by the state, do you guys know what PCI is? Have you ever discussed PCI before? Yeah. So they were mandated by the state because they process credit cards to do a pen test every year because of PCI. And so the person came to Redspin, but they were just super mean, right? Like in the sales process, which I was involved in at one point, just to tell them about our badass team of hackers or whatever. They just like put us down a whole bunch as a company. They borderline like verbally abused our wonderful sales lady, and it was a bad time. So first of all, don't ever do that if you're a customer to a group of hackers, because it's a bad idea. So instead of dedicating one resource to their test, we dedicated the whole team to their test. And so what happened was they had a web server, and they're not in business anymore, so I don't know if I could say their name, but they were a password manager, just like LastPass or OnePass, but they were not those two vendors. They were trying to get into it, and eventually it didn't work out. So, so what happened was they had a website. We ended up spending a couple days on recon trying to find out, like, you know, like all the parameters on the site, and that's kind of the, you know, the stuff you learn for the Web Application Hackers Handbook. You go to the site, you walk through it normally as a user, you map all the parameters, you find out what server-side software they're running, what code base they wrote the website in, and then you move from there. So we had spent a day and a half on recon or whatever, and no vulnerabilities yet. And you know, we also kicked off all of our automated tools at the beginning, you know, and so eventually we found one parameter, which was giving us it was erroring out on the web page, right? It gave us like a 400 error, where the rest of the website gave us a custom error, right? And so this is when you're a pen tester and you see an error that's different than the custom error, or the generic error. Like if you go to Tesla and you type in like something that doesn't exist after the slash on Tesla.com or Tesla Motors, it'll give you the Tesla car. It'll say, oh, we're sorry, we don't know what you're trying to do, right? Well, this error page was not that Tesla car, if we're using Tesla as an example. It was like a generic server-side error message. It said like, Apache doesn't know what the heck you're doing, right? So we're like, we noted it and highlighted it and we moved about, and then we came back to it later. And the parameter actually ended up taking, it was loading dynamic content to view on the server side. So what it was trying to do was render the results of an uploaded file, some of that text on the page. And so what we were able to do was make it error out, and we tried to upload a shell, and it didn't work because part of the rendering process turned our shell into like text or something like that. And so we kept on trying to hit it, and then eventually we figured out, well, why don't we try to manipulate where it's loading the file from? And so what happened was the parameter was kind of like this. So it was like vuln file dot, we'll just say PHP. I think it wasn't PHP. Question mark. And it was like file. Oh my God, file equals. And then doc1.
That's what it usually is.
Yeah.
If you see file equals, you should get excited.
Yeah. So it wasn't file equal. This is just like, I can't remember the exact parameter, right? So this was what we were messing with right here was doc1, and we could get it to error out. So we tried to do local file inclusion, which is the idea here is instead of saying doc1, I give it a file from the file system. I say dot, do you guys know what dot means in operating system syntax? Usually, like, what do you do when you want to move up a directory in Linux? Anybody know? CD dot, right? CD space dot, right? So dot means go up a directory, right? So when you do a directory traversal attack, you do dot slash slash slash. Who can tell me where the users in a Linux operating system are stored? What file hosts those names?
Bin. BIN.
What?
Bin.
Bin?
BIN.
Not in bin. It's Etsy.
Pass WD.
Yes,
There you go.
Etsy pass WD. There you go. So Etsy pass WD, right? So in this file are all your Linux usernames. And then in Etsy shadow is where your hashed passwords are in Linux. So we tried to get this parameter file to load this into the view of our web page. And that's normally how this vulnerability works. But it didn't work. It gave us a syntax error instead of our original error message. So now we had 3 error messages. We had the generic one, which gave us an image and was cool. And then we had a server error message when we gave it something it didn't understand. And then we got a different error message when we gave it this. So we did some investigation. It turned out that the server side was running this framework called CodeIgniter. It's a coding framework, CMS framework. And by doing some source code analysis, we figured out that the way that CodeIgniter actually references paths, because they don't want to use dots because it messes with the operating system, they do this. They do __/. I don't know why, but that's what they did in the framework. So we changed this to __// Etsy password. Bingo. So we get the contents, JP username, right? JSON username. Okay, so at this point we can read any file in the file system, but we can't execute anything. And as you know, as they had kind of abused us, we wanted to prove that we could, do more than that, right? So we took it to the next level. So what we did to try to exploit the server, at this point was like, all right, we need to find a way to get code to execute on this server, not just read files, but actually execute code. So what did we do? Well, we knew that this website, we'll just say password.com/file, right? This is okay, right? This.
Oh, better one.
Oh, cool. This is interesting. You guys are. This is cool. We can talk about this kind of stuff.
I like it.
Okay, cool. So password.com vuln PHP file. So what we did is we knew that we were sitting inside of /var /codeigniter. I think that's how you spell it. So we knew that because we read the documentation. So a lot of hacking, you read a lot of documentation. Yeah. So we knew we were sitting here. That's where the website was being run out of. That's where the files were being served out of. So what we did is we took the default files in an install of CodeIgniter, all the files that deploy when you deploy CodeIgniter, and we passed them to ________, or actually we just did one because we knew this would take us to here. Or it would actually take us to here. Yeah. And then we just asked that web page with this and that path, we asked it for every file that CodeIgniter gave it on the default install. So from that, we were able to get an encryption key. We were able to get all the default code. We were able to get the CMS login source code. So we basically downloaded all the source code for the web application by pulling it down through this parameter. Now, it didn't give us code execution right away, but they had modified some of the CodeIgniter code to include their custom pages. And so we also downloaded like all their index page and all of their pages for their website. So while we were doing recon, we noticed that there was a page like, it was like integrations, excuse my handwriting, .php. And we found it by just browsing, but none of our requests found any parameters for it. So we didn't know how it worked. We didn't know what to pass it parameter-wise to do anything with it. It was just interesting because it was called integrations. So because we could echo out the source code using this vulnerability, we echoed this out. So this had default credentials to contact their phpMyAdmin. Do you guys know what phpMyAdmin is? No? phpMyAdmin is a GUI for MySQL. So it allows database administrators to visualize tables and administer them with buttons and like a spreadsheet instead of doing it on the command line. So once we had the credentials from here, we logged in here. We found out that we knew it existed already. We had port scanned the box, so we knew that this was there. We didn't have a password for it though. So we broke into this. Long story short, we still didn't have remote code execution. We had all their customers' data, we had all their source code, but we didn't have remote code execution. So what we did is we crafted SQL statements that echoed source code back into the main page, which then added our malware to their page, and now we had a shell, and we could execute commands on Linux.
PHP shell, right?
PHP shell, yes, yeah. So that's the anatomy of a hack, kind of, web application hack. Don't ever belittle your pen test team. It took 3 engineers. It wasn't just me, but it was a lot of fun. We went on the call the next day because they had basically, been so mean to us. And we went on the call, or the next week, and we showed them like how we got everything. We even, just to kind of add insult to injury, we reverse engineered their password manager bookmarklet. And we showed them that there was vulnerabilities in that too because we had the source code. So like we really made like a large report, like a 70-page report on how their shit was just wrecked. Like their website was owned, their database was owned, their CMS was owned, their plugin was owned, everything. And so after that, they didn't belittle us anymore, and we worked with them a couple more times. But yeah, anyway.
You can do a lot more damage once you're in the MySQL GUI.
Oh yeah, we stopped there though.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing the pen test stuff, like as soon as you get remote code execution, that's where I stop. I don't want to pull out customer records. I don't want to do any of that because then you get into like legal stuff, right? I just want to show I can get remote code execution and do whatever I want, and then I'll stop. So, yeah. I mean, the step after this, if you're in an objective-based pen test world, would be to the server that this is actually on, like whatever address, right? You would try to see if this server is somehow connected to their internal network. And then because I have compromised this server, I would try to pivot from here to their internal network and start taking over machines on the inside of their network.
So was that server behind the
It wasn't, the database server was behind the DMZ, right? Application talked to database server, which was behind the DMZ.
Okay.
Yeah. But we didn't do that because that wasn't in the scope of the pen test.
Yeah. You stop basically when you have a proof of concept.
Yeah. So, cool. Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that we do. I'll erase that, sorry. But it also kind of shows web application vulnerabilities just in general. This is the kind of stuff you do weekly when you do web application penetration testing, or, well, really, that's the main job. Some people call it web application assessment or whatever. Sam said that you guys might be interested in, how do you get credible to do this kind of work? So I paid my way myself to get my SANS certifications. So like 8 years ago now, I saved up my own money to do what's called their work study program. So do you all know what SANS is? Yeah? So it's an InfoSec training company, and they have like 40 classes. They're all very work-oriented around security. And so they have one called GWAPT, which is the one I took, the GIAC or SANS Web Application Penetration Testing class. And you go for 5 days, and it's a buttload of money. It's like $4K or something like that to go for a week, and plus you have to pay for your hotel and your travel. But they have this thing called the Work Study Program, which is awesome. So instead of $4K, you pay $800, which is still a lot, I know, but it's worth it to get this thing. What they give you is they give you one course, and they give you, well, actually you get 2 courses, right? You get to go and help and be a teacher's aide for a professor in the work study program. So you take a week, you go on site, you help this professor, you get him water, you pick things up from students. If you want to help with labs, if you have that proficiency, you help them with labs. And then you also work in the bookstore and you do all this other stuff for SANS for a week. It's really hard work. Like they work you from dawn till dusk, but it's a great opportunity and it costs way less. And then when you're done, they give you a free class, a virtual class, you do it online, and then they give you 2 free certification attempts, I think. And so I paid my $800 out of my pocket to do the first one I did was network penetration testing, and the second one I did was web application penetration testing. And then the equivalent that SANS has to the CISSP is called the GSEC, and it's like the CISSP, which is the certification in the information security field that says you're like a high-level practitioner. And you know about lots of domains of security, but you may not be like an on-the-ground practitioner. It's their equivalent to that. It's a little bit more practical, but it's not as industry accepted. But I took that one too, just to be safe. Those allowed me to get my job. That and winning a CTF competition allowed me to get my job with HP, which I was at for 5 years. So I would suggest if you're getting into assessment, hacking, penetration testing, look at SANS, and then the other really recognized certification in the industry is called the OSCP. So I guess I'll write these down. So
That was a serious business.
yeah, the OSCP is more of a practitioner certification. It's made by a company called Offensive Security, and they teach you how to basically do a whole bunch of core skill sets. So one is like reconnaissance, port scanning. But the primary one that they care about is you being able to write an actual buffer overflow, so a stack overflow, which you guys may have already done. But what they do is they teach you for 6 months or in a self-learning course, and then at the end, they put you in this lab environment that's like a real-world lab, and it is hard. You go at it for 48 hours, and that's all the time you have, including reporting, which is not that much time.
Yeah.
And so you do that, and you get your certification. So this one, I think, is 1,200 or something like that.
Yeah, it's 1,200.
This one, so I did GSEC, GWAPT, and then GPen is the network penetration testing one. So you can do these all for $800 if you get into the work study program. And these, when I did these were invaluable to get into the industry. Yeah.
You have to qualify for the work study program somehow, or
I just email, like you email an email box and you're like, hey, I live in this area of the country. I want to do the work study program. And then I think you have to tell them a little bit about your experience, why you want to be. And so I would just recommend writing a really passionate note and saying, hey, I care a lot about security, really want to get into it. Here's all the other stuff I've been doing. I've been doing labs and stuff like that. And, I got in pretty easily. The one I had to go to was in Las Vegas. So I booked the Allegiant flight in Santa Maria because I'm from Southern California to Las Vegas for like $80 and stayed for a week and then came back. So, any questions? No? Cool. Yeah.
You gave your stories about how you broke into the industry.
Yeah.
It seems like the industry is becoming more professionalized these days.
Yeah.
Higher expectations for just getting your foot in the door. There are a lot of job postings that say you must have a CISSP and at least 2 years of experience.
Yeah, don't listen to
Don't listen to that. Just submit your resume anyway. That's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can practically do the work, you can probably get the job. That's what people care about. So I don't know if Sam has showed you, but there's 2 resources that are invaluable when you're looking for InfoSec jobs right now that you can find online. One is the Reddit.
Yep.
What is the
R
slash
NetSec.
R? Yeah, r/NetSec. So network security is the subreddit for all things security. It's a great resource for news.
Yep.
But the pinned topic on here is what are we in, quarter 2 right now?
Quarter 2.
So every quarter they do this post called, and it's pinned at the top, quarter 2 InfoSec hiring thread.
Yep. Basically, it's everyone from the industry.
It's all the consultancies.
All the consultancies, they'll just post job postings looking for people.
Yeah, and so what I would recommend any of you looking for a job and think this is cool, or just looking for a job in general actually, is this one. And then there's another one, a conference that runs in DC called ShmooCon. You'll have to Google this one because I don't have the URL. It's called the ShmooCon hiring list. And that's another posting of open information security jobs. So they'll tell you what the job is, they'll tell you what qualifications they're looking for, and they will try to say that they want previous experience. The way I would approach that is apply with what you have. Make sure to cite in your resume that you've done practice labs like Damn Vulnerable Web App, Matilde, Metasploitable, like all of the learning apps that you can do that Sam has probably given you. Cite that you've done all those, that's sometimes enough. If it's not enough, tell them that you're willing to work as an intern. And usually a paid internship in InfoSec is as much as an IT professional makes anywhere else. So I would suggest just writing a heartfelt letter. Like in InfoSec, I just think, or in anything, authenticity is kind of the king, right? Like if you just say you're passionate about security, I don't know everything, but I know these things, I've done these labs, you can probably get a job from one of these companies. The other key here is check the past quarters too. So quarter 1, and then go back into 2016 and check all their quarters as well. The companies that aren't necessarily posted in quarter 2 maybe have just forgot to post, or they're not looking anymore, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't email them and say, hey, I'm looking for a position at the email box that they referenced last quarter.
Yeah, definitely like the path I took is getting internships, and that's really the foot in the door to getting into any kind of industry job anyway. But I did want to mention, so for software developers, at least, when right after I graduated college, it would be important to put like github.com, like your GitHub profile and all the stuff that you've actually, all the source code you wrote. But you can kind of do that now with bug bounty services like Bugcrowd. That's your resume, and then they could just look at your what you've done on Bugcrowd and be like, well, this guy knows how to do what he says he does. So.
Yeah, I mean, most big companies, so this isn't just consultancies looking for people, it's also big companies looking for internal security talent. So most big companies are looking for application security professionals right now.
Yes.
So like the network level vulnerabilities have started to go away because the services that run on the network and those protocols, they're not completely secure. I won't say they're completely secure, but a lot of them have just been kind of phased out as people learn to write more secure code. Like Heartbleed was the last big network level vulnerability we had, and that was very few and far between the last big RCE that we had for a network vulnerability, unless you're talking about like a custom made one by some company. But like you're not finding O-Days in Apache or like
luck.
SSH or something like that anymore. You're not finding those vulnerabilities. So these companies are looking for people to secure their web apps because that's where
That's the lowest level.
yeah, it's where all of the business logic has moved, right? Before, when you worked at an IT company, they might do a lot of the processing and the business logic and processing payments and everything on the back end, and you would just send them your information in a purchase order. The web now works very different. Everything's done through web applications, so everybody's looking for application security professionals.
And the bar is actually pretty low for web application security professionals just because there is a very high skill shortage, and it's very hard to find like anybody
Yeah, it is.
now that like is decent at web application security. So you might find some luck there.
It's still a pretty burgeoning career. Now, what we do at BugCrowd, some people have argued that we are outsourcing the industry that we came from. And I have some friends, and I've lost some pen test friends who do pen testing still for a living and say that bug bounty is killing the industry. But I argue with those guys all the time. There is enough work for everybody. Like, I mean, I know people at Walmart. I know the security team at Walmart is hiring every time I talk to them, right? And they're willing to take interns who, don't know how to do half of the stuff that an intern, does at normal places, just because this hacking art is such a niche part of IT, right? Like, there are a lot of systems, and I'm sorry if you're a systems administrator. There are a lot of systems administrators out there. There are a lot of people who can do databases. There are not that many people who can do what I just diagrammed up here, who know the logic behind how applications work, how you attack them, how you give that information back to people. Now, I'm not saying it's easier or harder. A system admin's job is harder probably than a hacker. Like a developer's job is probably, I can't code half of the systems I break into, but I'm really good at knowing how to break into things. So if you're interested in it, the outlook is pretty good, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of the search that are available. Would you say the lesser ones like Security Plus would just still be a good way to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So the prereqs for my class are doing 5 Code Academy courses. It's HTML, CSS, administer a web server course on Code Academy. And then I also teach them by myself. I teach them N+ and S+. Those are the 2 I teach them. If they are just getting out of the Army, I teach them A+ as well, because they literally don't know too much, right? So that's the path I usually have them take. I don't make them certify. Like, I actually think that the tests for most CompTIA stuff, like, I don't know, like not super relevant if that's not what they're gonna do at the end of the day if they're looking to do security, but still somewhat valuable. Security Plus teaches you a lot of the concepts in this. We'll talk a little bit about offensive security, like a tiny bit, but mostly focus on like firewalls, network segmentation, security architecture, secure services, some web app stuff, and it's a more generalized thing. But it's a great place to start, yeah. The other one that I didn't mention is the CEH. Don't do that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, it's not lame. It's just that it's not very respected in the industry. You could spend the same amount of money trying to get your OSCP, learn more practical skills.
When I did it, there was no Linux.
Oh, there was no, yeah.
You're kidding.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in our industry, being a CEH, a certified ethical hacker, which is EC Council is the company that runs that certification. The course material wasn't very good, at least back in the day. I've heard it's gotten a lot better, so it might be much better. But I would focus on OSCP or SANS if you could. Yeah. Yes. JP, yeah.
You've worked with Stanford and UCSF.
Yeah.
Can you touch on the opportunities, I guess, in the HIPAA compliance side? What's foreseeable?
So I got out of that industry probably 10 years ago. But I mean, there's always going to be a need for those kind of jobs. It depends on what you want to do. Do you want to be on the blue team? Do you want to be on the defensive side? Mostly what you're going to be doing, if you're going to work at UCSF or Stanford for like HIPAA stuff, is where I did a lot of my stuff, is that you're going to end up hardening systems and basically just stopping bad guys from getting in, or even stuff like privacy things. When I worked at UCSF, I would handle the mailing list from that I would get from like the RIAA or like those kinds of companies, and they would send us reports of these IP addresses that were like downloading movies and stuff. So you get to see that, but for the most part, like for those, it's hard to get into those just because it's like healthcare places. The jobs aren't as prevalent like compared to like places that need web app security. But it depends on like where you. It really depends on like when and where you look. It's like it's all on timing. It's like if you can find like a place that'll take you, you just need to convince them, pretty much that you're the person for that job. Or even if the position doesn't exist, like what Jason was saying, like maybe you can like convince like a company that you're working for to like give you that kind of experience. So
the HIPAA stuff I've dealt with in the past, or at least recently, has been a lot of my friends still work at Redspin, and Redspin pivoted their business from PCI and financial to HIPAA, and so they do HIPAA assessments now. So HIPAA, like PCI, now has like a fledgling methodology where they want you to assess their networks and how to do a HIPAA audit, and that's spelled out now. So you can actually map your skills against the HIPAA standards and how they do security tests if you're looking at security in specific and privacy checks that they make you do. And so with that, you can get those skill sets. I would say most of them are based around vulnerability assessment instead of penetration testing, whereas we will break into things and show that we broke into with them. Vulnerability assessment just says that there's a vulnerability, you've used a tool to verify it, and you're testing a large base of network. But it's like vulnerability assessment light because you're dealing with healthcare machines that cannot go down. Like if somebody's like, like unit that they're connected to for life support goes down, usually they have redundancies, but these things were coded a long, long time ago and they have a lot of security vulnerabilities. So there are strict ways that you need to test these networks so that you don't bring anything down.
Yeah, for the HIPAA side too, it's mostly gonna be, you're looking for like things like information leakage or like privacy issues, not so much like things like cross-site scripting, and you'll probably look for like SQL injection stuff, but it's very privacy and information leakage heavy. So,
What's PCI?
PCI is the payment card industry or payment card institute. I can't remember industry. Yeah. So they're a council that dictates what financial companies who process credit cards have to do for security testing every year. So if you process credit cards in a large enough scale, they say that you have to have a penetration test every year by a third party, and you have to have someone internal who runs your security that does X things every year for your security program. So HIPAA has started to model themselves after that, and they have some standards on what they want those security people to do and what they want to check for, or how to design those networks or products or services or devices. Yeah.
It's very hard to test HIPAA too because like if you find like patient data, you're already like you're hosed.
Yeah.
What do you think of the CISA?
Really, I don't have a lot of experience with it, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I just haven't run into it a ton. So
I've heard that's what you should get to be the compliance officer.
Oh yeah.
Like HIPAA and PCI. And the thing I heard is it's kind of a dull job like being the tax accountant, but you get to go home at 5.
Yeah, I mean it's the auditor job, I think, right? So
the auditor job is the less exciting side of security, but it's the one where it's like financial where you get to go home.
Yeah, I mean auditors work in a very structured world. There are security-based auditors, and it can be a great job too. So the audit job role probably a little bit less technical than the pen test or even the vulnerability assessment job role, but pays a lot of money because it's inside of the financial industry. So I haven't heard the question yet of what the job money level is for this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Is anybody interested in how much you make on average as a penetration tester?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So on average, this is the first thing my students ask me. So like that's what I put out. So a junior level resource. So it's like intro. You could do some cross-site scripting, or you could do some vulnerability assessment. We'll make somewhere in the range normally between 60 and 80K. So decent salary, right? A medium level resource. Oh wait, that's not them. Medium level resource, will make somewhere in the range of 80 to 120K. A senior resource can make 120K, probably up to 200K.
200, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that's a little bit over the standard for IT jobs, but maybe not in San Francisco. San Francisco will pay you a lot to be a developer or just general IT, so you probably could make this much doing anything else. But I think in San Francisco, these rates go up anyway too, so I'm not sure. Like I said, specialized skill set and still good job outlook. I think there's something like 1.4 million unfilled security jobs right now. Security in general, not just testing, but administering firewalls, web application assessment, IDS management, whatever. So, yes.
So how, these numbers you gave us, how should you be looking at it? Is 8 to 5 job or?
Yeah, 8 to 5 job. 8 to 5 job, probably around, when you're at the junior level, I guess I'll put this here, 60% travel. That's pretty high. If you have a family, it's hard. I have a family. I don't travel that much anymore because I'm down here. But yeah, the reason why is because at the junior level, I mean, basically you're the gopher. You go for the consultancy or the company on site to all their locations or to all their clients and do everything that's not their public web app. So you have to actually get in a plane, go stay in a hotel. You're on site for a week at a time at a client. Then you come home for a couple of weeks, then you go back out, and you're home for a couple of weeks, and you go back out, company after company, until you get to this level where you're probably around 40% travel and then 20% travel. These are just rough estimates, but yeah.
I was just going to ask how far you travel, but you kind of answered that when you said take a plane.
Yeah, I mean, you go all over the place. So consultancies who will hire you off of the hiring lists, some names of some are like, I don't know, NCC Group, IO Active. These are companies that are known to have pen testers on staff to do this type of work, and you consult with them. They'll send you all over the world, actually, not just the US. I've been to many places doing security assessments. So, but yeah, I mean, like, they'll usually send you to tech hubs is where a lot of people want security assessment work, or wherever the headquarters are for the financial institutions that need to protect their data, things like that. If you live in the website assessment realm, you have to travel less. Because websites are available online and you can do all that pen testing from the office of the consultancy or even from home. So when I worked at HP, all my pen testers were remote. I didn't have a physical office. They were all remote, 100% remote. I would give them a target and a client and a scope of engagement on Monday. They had to turn in a report by Friday. And that was their responsibility, and it was my responsibility to interview them and teach them methodology and make sure that they could do that.
So I will say this about that chart, but it's funny that Jason was like, so when I first started, there weren't a lot of jobs anyway, and the first job I got offered was 40K in the Bay Area. So don't let that get you down because just work, if you work at that job and you do really well, like 2 or 3 years later, you're already like in the medium level.
Yeah.
Like don't let the pay structure like get you down. If you work really, really hard, you start making connections with people, then you get to the higher echelons of pay. But like that shouldn't be like the showstopper for you. It's how hard do you want it, or how much do you want it, and how hard do you want to work for it.
Yeah, so internship level, or if you're at a place that's really journeyman, an internship is probably like 35 to 55K somewhere. Yeah.
And probably no travel.
No travel for interns. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Is that a good outlook, Sam, compared to other IT things?
I don't know, but I don't think you choose based on that sort of consideration. I hope not.
Yeah,
you do what you love.
Yeah.
You gotta do good.
Yeah.
You won't get anything.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that you hate, why are you going to school to learn to do something you hate?
Yeah.
Switch
Why are
departments,
you
find
going
something.
to 9 to 5 job and just do the thing you hate?
Like-
Find something you like.
I didn't find this until I was like 26 or something like that, and I didn't even know it was a thing. And then I didn't get a real position until I was like 27 or something like that. So, or 28. So like, I don't know, that's kind of old-ish. I don't know. But I knew as soon as I started that it was what I loved. Like that whole thing that I drew out, like that stuff gets me excited. Like breaking into a network. And the other part of it gets me excited too, explaining it to a customer and telling them how I did it and how they can fix it. I have some remedial skills in code. So telling them how to fix it and all that is important to me too. I want to be a good guy at the end of the day, and that's what this whole profession is about, actually. At the end of the day is helping those companies be more secure, right? Because if I found it, someone on the internet who's a bad guy couldn't find it. So, yeah. Yes?
In addition to web app testing, what are some other subfields in security that are really growing rapidly right now, especially in the Bay Area?
Okay, so web app, so let's go over domains, I guess. So what's commonly referred to as AppSec. This is websites. This is testing, I guess. APIs. There's also testing mobile applications. This is pretty in demand as well. So learning the code bases that mobile applications use and finding security vulnerabilities in those. So iOS and Android apps. Windows Mobile really isn't a thing anymore. What else? Network security has kind of gone down on the Outlook range, but I still know people who do it for a living. So network security. So this is testing networks as well as like implementing firewalls and watching IDS rules. So testing firewalls, IDS, yeah. Do you guys know what IDS is? Intrusion detection system. Yeah. What else is in network?
Oh, cloud.
Oh, host-based. I guess like host-based. Host-based administration, like maintaining a fleet of computers on the internal network that has like antivirus or something like that.
And then within AppSec and mobile, you can either do DAST or SAST.
Yeah.
Which is like black box testing versus white box testing.
Yeah, so I don't know where you'd put that here. So the burgeoning new one is this term called IoT. Do you guys know what IoT is?
Super cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about history, I guess. So we started out here as an industry. We thought that the end-all be-all was firewalls, blocking attacks via IDS, doing host protection with antivirus. Quickly, nobody was attacking the network anymore. Not nobody, but most of the attacks moved to the websites and the APIs. So the job shifted over to AppSec, right? Then, after AppSec was predominant for 10 years, and we're at the tail end of that, then it was mobile. The last 5 years, it's been mobile, testing mobile applications. Now, after mobile, which is like this year, now it's IoT. So IoT is testing devices. Now, the interesting thing here is network testing, at least security testing and firewall and host, like this is a pretty hard job. Moving over into AppSec, probably like the same skill set. Some of the same skill sets, pretty hard. Moving to mobile requires a little bit more skill, moving to like these two languages and understanding, but still pretty easy. Moving to IoT actually brings us back to some of the core skill sets that were in network, because these devices sit on the network, they communicate with protocols that you don't know about, and they also host embedded versions of operating systems that for the last 12 years, we haven't been paying attention to because we've been so caught up in AppSec and mobile. So IoT actually is a cool combination of all the security testing we've ever done, because the IoT device could range anything, right? It could be a camera, it could be a SCADA system that controls the power to your city. It can be anything. So the skill set for IoT is like much more than, or it's like all these put together. And that's kind of where the industry is right now. What happened is, we got good at network, we got good at securing the network, we're getting decent at securing AppSec. The mobile OSs, iOS and Android, did a lot of this work securing this stuff for us. So they started implementing security controls into iOS and Android. So we got better at security here. But the IoT devices, what happened was that they were originally devices that didn't have network connections. They didn't connect out to the internet. They didn't do anything. They were developed like that. And then someone came and told them, hey, the new thing is to be able to put your camera on the internet or to open your garage with your phone. So now they bake in all of this internet connectivity with no security controls. And so that's the new thing, the new type of testing.
Basically it got harder to hack network, then it's getting harder to hack AppSec. It's getting harder to hack mobile. and now IoT is like the lowest level of like easiest to hack.
Yeah.
So it just like keeps moving as things get harder to hack or easier to hack.
IoT will be the culmination though, because a lot of things fall under IoT, cars, like all kinds of stuff. So it will be at IoT for quite a while until there's regulation around you have to secure your IoT devices if you're a manufacturer, something like that. So.
Is the only big company have a IDS team?
Most big companies have a security team. One person on that team is dedicated to firewalls and IDS. One person on that team is usually dedicated to network security testing. Another one's dedicated to AppSec. The smallest teams, security teams, you'll see at big companies, at corporate or either at like a branch or something like that, is as small as 1 or 2 people. But at big corporations, it can be up to 15 to 20 people dedicated to securing the organization, and they all do different things.
That reminds you, can you tell them something about what you do at DEF CON?
Oh yeah, so I run the car hacking CTF. So we work with Fiat Chrysler, and we make a capture the flag competition. So last year we had an open registration. You could register, and we had a whole bunch of challenges that pertained to cars. And so connected cars in specific. So we had a whole bunch of challenges. You could register, you had to solve them, and then the highest point level got a black badge to DEF CON, which is the greatest hacker honor that you can get. So we design the challenges, we administer the scoreboard, et cetera, et cetera. So this year we're going to do it again. I think the prize will be a black badge again, I hope. It's really up to DEF CON's discretion. But we have some other cool prizes too that are cool. What the cool thing about last year's CTF is that the winners of last year's CTF weren't seasoned security professionals or even people who worked in the security community. It was like a hobbyist who had reverse engineered his tractor to do things it didn't do before. And he had learned the protocols that the tractor used, which was similar to cars. So he came with his wife, and them together won the CTF. So, yeah.
I heard the tractors are awesomely complicated.
Yeah, they are really complicated. Yeah, yeah. So, any other questions? Yeah.
About learning IoT security, do you have any suggestions for a good learning path, resources to draw upon? It's still pretty new. There are some books out there, I know.
Yeah.
But,
So IoT devices will use multiple type of protocols to communicate with the internet. Most of the time, they're the same skills as APIs down here. So REST-based APIs is normally what these things communicate with to the internet. So getting comfortable testing web APIs or basically headless websites, you can think about it, right, would be a skill set that you need to know. To break physically into like that thing, right? Like if I want to steal the data that's hosted on that thing up there, I'm gonna have to know how to physically open the device, break out the circuit board, find the physical jack that the manufacturer made. A couple of them are UART and JTAG. The JTAG is the most predominant one. Hook up some cables and dump the data from that thing. So a little bit of embedded hardware skills or circuit knowledge, stuff like that.
Learn how to solder.
You can do all that at DEF CON. If you go to DEF CON, they have workshops to do a lot of that stuff. Yeah, hardware hacking. So another good resource to learn a lot of this, that there's courses freely available on the net. I mean, there's a ton of them, but one of the good ones is SecurityTube.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to recruit him to teach here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vivek is awesome.
I know.
.com. Yeah, so SecurityTube is run by this guy named Vivek, and he makes classes for all of these. Network testing, web app testing, mobile testing, IoT testing. Some of them he just charge for, but it's so minimal. It's like 20 or 40 bucks or something like that. And it's full scale class. He gives you labs, and he has one on IoT that he just launched a couple weeks ago, which I really like. I think it's super cool. And it gives you all of that knowledge. How to hack APIs, how to connect to the hardware, how to analyze the protocols if they're not web protocols, normal places where they leave vulnerabilities on the services that they run, things like that. Kind of overload, sorry. Yeah, what's up?
There are a lot of books out there for this kind of information.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any particular ones? Just because, again, there's so many. There's a chance of getting the wrong one, but
sure.
For the most part.
So anything published by No Starch usually is pretty highly vetted. So for web application security, for AppSec, the Bible for AppSec is the Web Application Hackers Handbook, which you guys have probably already seen, but I'll write it down anyway.
It's a little old,
But
Yeah.
all the vols are still valid. It's like
So here's the
those
thing.
vols didn't go away.
So the Web Application Hackers Handbook, Sam said, we were talking about this before we came to class. It's missing some stuff, like newer frameworks and stuff, but they update it every 2 years. For the fundamentals, there's no better resource to learn web application security. So in that vein, there's also the iOS Application Hackers Handbook and the mobile, all published by No Starch. Those are the best in breed for, this one goes into iOS specific and this one goes into mobile both platforms. Those are the best books for mobile testing. There's not an IoT one I recommend yet. For network hacking, there's one called, oh shoot, what is the name of it? It's posted by O'Reilly, or it's a book by O'Reilly. Shoot, I can't remember it. I'll have to think of it. Maybe I can email Sam and I'll let him know. But for network testing, there's one that gives you the basics of testing network services, vulnerability assessment, and then finally pen testing on a network. Those are, yeah.
What do you use next semester?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's network assessment. It's just called network assessment. It's a O'Reilly book, I think. Yeah.
Kind of reverse engineering too.
Oh yeah, for reverse engineering and exploits and stuff like that. Is it just reverse engineering? As it was?
Yeah.
Network?
It's just network assessment, I think.
Where's this one we tried?
Yeah, by O'Reilly.
Okay.
Is that big iOS that you're talking about or small iOS?
I'm sorry, what?
iOS, is that small iOS or big iOS?
What do you mean, small or big iOS?
Is it capital?
Oh, it's lowercase. Yeah, network security assessment. There it
This
is.
one, network security assessment. Okay, I'll put
Yeah.
it on my news links.
Yeah, so Chris Knabb wrote network security and assessment. He's one of the original founders or big partners of ISEC Partners, which is a big consultancy in this space. So
We're now at NCC.
yeah, they have turned into NCC Group, which is the largest consulting body for doing security testing in the world. Yeah, so I'll email Sam any other ones I can think of too. So there's like some specific ones too around tools. So if you want to get really into learning how to use Nmap, which is a tool you use here, there, and there, there's an Nmap book that's really good. There's a Metasploit book that's really good. But like if you're a reading-based learner, you can get all these things, but most of this information is available on like tutorials or blogs or stuff online if you just want to go search it on the internet too.
The website I don't see is .com. I only see .net.
Oh, .net. There you go. Security2.net, you're right. Is there an eraser somewhere?
It's just a paper towel.
Oh, all right.
I want Vivek to come here and teach online classes.
What?
I want him to teach our online classes.
Oh yeah, he's Vivek's awesome.
He's moving here.
Oh, he is?
Moving to
San Francisco? Okay, cool. Yeah, the IoT course, I did a review for the first iteration of it, and I loved it. And
They
then,
got that cheap. Let me see how much he's charging.
I don't know how, the IoT one is probably a little more expensive because it's a new one, but the other ones have been free, or at least some of them go to free right away, so.
There's a few free ones, but I thought it was like $200 a month or something.
I think that's for like the ongoing subscription one. I'm not sure, I haven't checked in a little while actually. Yeah.
Video.
Any other questions while he's looking that up? Yeah.
About certification. The next step of OSCP is OSCE. Is
Yes.
that was to take? Another.
If you're a glutton for punishment, yeah.
They're my hardcore.
Okay, so the OSCP is the first one.
Right. That's
OSCE, and this stands for Offensive Security Certified Professional. This one stands for Offensive Security Certified Expert. So the core competencies here is discovery, recon on a network, making a stack-based overflow, pivoting on Linux boxes, doing privilege escalation. Those are all pretty standard in this skill set right here. This one goes into doing mostly exploits at a higher level. So stack-based overflows are no longer a thing. They don't really exist, right? Format string bugs and stack-based overflows have just been phased out of security because of the languages that we write in now. All of the functions or classes that do data, do user data, now have escaping and buffer limits, and you can't do just like a general buffer overflow anymore. Now you can do some exploits which are super fancy, which is like return-oriented program exploits or or like it's still an overflow, but you have to do special techniques to master that. And this class is all about those special techniques to do exploitation, and it's really hard. It's epically hard.
Not a lot of people have the OSCP, and even less people have the OSC.
Yeah,
So.
but I mean, if you want to do it and you want to get into this stuff, it's amazing. Like if I see someone with an OSC, I hire them almost on site. If they're a cool person, like if they're a decent person, right? Like I don't hire anybody on site, but that proves to me that you have the requisite skill sets for any of this, or you have the ability to learn it.
I put the IoT course link on my news. It's $99 in the first month and $40 a month thereafter. And there's 50 videos.
That's the IoT one, yeah.
Yeah, it looks great.
That's brand new, yeah.
It's not Vivek, it's another guy.
Yeah, it's another guy that's going through Vivek's site, right? Yeah. It's Aditya, I think, is his name. And they also have a kit that gives you all the hardware to do the hardware hacking that you can buy from that too. It's pretty expensive though, but they're trying to work to get the price down. So yeah. Yes.
What's the ballpark range like of when you know you can give it a try to go for the OSCP? Like when do you?
The OSCP or the E?
Either one. I'm assuming the OSCP is easier than the.
Yeah, OSCP is the easiest one. So this is number 1 and this is number 2.
Easier.
Easier. Yeah, it's still super hard, right?
Super hard.
Harder.
So yeah.
Harder.
So there's a site that does. Oh God, there's 2 sites. Shoot, I'm running out of board space. Okay. So securitytube.net for tutorials, but if you want practice applications, and this is what you're gonna have to do over and over and over in order to be able to get to the point to do the OSCP, there's 2 resources that I give my students. One is the OWASP broken web application directory. And the other one, you just have to Google this. And the other one is VulnHub. So the OWASP Broken Web Application Directory is OWASP's attempt to find all of these purposely vulnerable applications that people make to learn this stuff, and they put it into tables and they keep that updated. And it's an updated project. It has 3 categories. One is, yeah.
So it's actual like vulnerable applications that are real?
Yeah, they're real. I mean, they're not like websites anyone owns. You stand them up yourself, and you do security challenges on them to teach yourself, right? So they have 3 sections in that. One is labs that are VMs that you stand up on virtual machine and you attack them on your own computer. Other ones are live ones that are on the internet, actually hosted by someone for you to just kind of play around with. And the other ones are ISOs that you download and you make a VM from them. And so they have 3 sections here. VulnHub is kind of the same idea, except for they're more focused on network level and what you call boot to root challenges. So boot to root challenges is a VMware instance or an ISO challenge where you start up the VM and you don't get access to the server, you don't get the password or anything. It just starts up a box, gets DHCP, and then you have to hack it. There's no instructions. And so people make these challenges and post them to VulnHub, and they're really good for learning the skills in the OSCP because they'll have learning how to do a buffer overflow. They'll have a target for privilege escalation. They'll have a target for like a Linux target or a Windows target. And then these ones are valuable as well.
And I don't know about that one in particular, but in general, if something's been up about a year, there are instructions.
Oh, yeah.
There are blogs somewhere where somebody's walked.
There's always a YouTube video. There's always one. So like you're not hacking alone. Like I think it's just as valuable for my students when I give them these 2 resources, just as valuable to go to YouTube and learn how to do it from a YouTube guide than it is like struggling through it almost, because you're still absorbing the information. You'll learn how to do it. And on the next VulnHub challenge, you'll have that requisite skill set. So.
Oh, and the good thing about OSCP too is it's not just the cert. They'll give you like videos and they'll give you like an entire guide, and you go through that.
Yeah.
And then you use the things that you learned there on like labs that they give you. So OSCP is very good.
Yeah, they have a practice lab that you get so many hours for. And one of our guys just passed the OSCP on our team, and another one is taking it right now currently. So.
Everybody tells me.
Except for you can download like ISO package and whatnot. Are they safe, or could some be bad?
I mean, they're vulnerable.
Yeah, they're vulnerable.
You wouldn't want to use them to host a website online. You want to host them on your PC and then NAT them. Yeah, and then like you'll get a NAT address, you'll get a local address, and you hack that VM, right? And then you'll get into it and whatever.
You don't install it on like a PC, right? and you just jail it in like a VM.
Cool. Any more questions? Yeah.
Do real pen testers copy and paste codes from Stack Overflow?
No, that's usually how we get into sites, is people copying and pasting codes from Stack Overflow. So no, there's like we don't. Well, I mean, I guess yeah. So when I have to write custom code to do exploitation or some web test or something like that, I will go to Stack Overflow sometimes and look at how to script something up if I don't know how to do it in Python or something like that. So, but there's two versions of Stack Overflow specifically, one for security and then one for pen testing. And so you can go there and ask questions about doing security audits or securing a network, and people will answer your questions. And I think it's just like Security Overflow is the name. I can't remember. I'd have to Google it or something. But there's two of those that I kind of like. People will go on and help you and stuff. So, yes.
One last question that's career oriented.
Yeah.
So, do you have any recommendations on types of, for somebody who's starting out in the industry, looking to break into the industry, any types of organizations that you suggest that an applicant focus on so that they, are put on the good path, shall we say?
What do you mean by organizations?
Well, like large corporations, like trying to find a position on a blue team in a large corporation, or working for a consultancy, or I don't know what else comes to mind.
I mean, I would do whatever comes first, honestly. Like whatever will give you a chance in the industry. Like don't hold out for a consultancy or something like that. Consultancies are fun because you get a new app every week, right? Like a blue team or a red team that works for a company. Those teams get, a few applications and that's it. That's all they ever work on. They do different things with those applications, but yeah, I would take whatever comes first, honestly. Yeah.
Because then after that, when you have the actual skill set, then that's when you're valuable, and companies will, like, I kid you not, like, on my second year of doing this, I would have companies hitting me up, like, every day and every week.
Yeah, I get upwards of like 15 LinkedIn requests a day trying to like, for positions, people looking for people to do this kind of stuff. In fact, I have like a copy paste script that just says like, not interested right now, but keep me like in mind, a year in the future or whatever. So yeah.
Very hot.
And like some of this all sounds hard, but there's a lot of resources and it's actually not that hard. If you throw yourself into it. So like White Hat, the company he used to work at, they had a program that was so good at training this stuff is they could take someone off the street who had never done
Literally off the street.
who had never done any security before but knew how to boot up a computer and maybe knew a little bit of HTML, and they could learn how to do the AppSec part of it. So like I wouldn't be super intimidated to it. If you have the passion and the willingness to learn, you can get into it. It's not the end of the world. So yeah. Cool.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Glad you're here. That's what we need.
Yeah. Hoping to see some new faces in the industry, right?
Well, we need them.
Yeah, we do.
My students are getting jobs, even at very elementary levels of training.
Yeah.
Everybody's desperate.
Yeah, everybody needs people, right? Yeah.
Do bug bounty programs because then you can pay for all your certs.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing we didn't hit on a ton, but like bug bounty programs allow you to do some of this and make a resume online through the leaderboards. So like, because I was high up on the leaderboard for Bug Crowd, like that also gives me a lot of credence. And if you score any points at all on the Bug Crowd leaderboard, pretty much says that you have the requisite skill sets to do AppSec. And so like you can use that on your resume nowadays. It's a pretty new thing, but a lot of people are willing to accept it as knowledge. So, yeah.
Well, you
Pay your way through college.
Yeah, CTFs too. Yeah.
Yes.
I've been to live cons, and if you score high in the CTF, people want to offer you jobs right away.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I got my job at HP. We did this book, Web Application Hackers Handbook.
Yeah.
I missed a word. The Web Application Hackers Handbook. They do a live training, and at the end they do a CTF, and I basically sat next to a dude who later became my best friend, and we did the CTF together, and we got second. And then right afterwards, he was like, seems like you know your stuff. You want a job at HP? And I was like, not really. Next week I called him back. I'm like, yeah, I want that job. So, and that was one of the best decisions of my life. So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.